Hey everyone, this is Tracy Friedlander. You're listening to Crushing Classical, redefining a thriving classical music career. On the show today, I have Sophie Lippert, pianist and entrepreneur. In this conversation, we dive deep on building community. Because in any endeavor, especially a performing one, having true fans is key to your success. Sophie shares the details on how she built her community from scratch and how that has translated to an online community that continues to support her now in her artistic endeavors. A lot of what Sophie talks about reminded me of the Amanda Palmer TED Talk, which if you haven't seen it, you got to go Google it and listen immediately. It's so good. About building community in a truly authentic way. And she shares her tips and things she does that helps people feel appreciated and set the stage for an experience, whether that's in person, online, or while they're listening to your recording. And this advice is great for any business, whether it's business, teaching, or performing. You're going to love this conversation. But before we get started, I have a few things I want you to know about. I have a gift for you. It's my new free report called Get More Students. Attract top quality students that are a joy to work with and pay you top dollar. This just went live and people are already emailing me after reading it and saying it's really getting them thinking in new ways about how they can streamline and improve their teaching business. This report will show you how you can make more money, have more time, find your ideal student, and actually build a studio you love. The link to download the report is in the show notes. And by the way, this report is for you, whether you already have a full studio or you're starting from scratch, whether you're teaching lessons or looking to attract students or clients to offer them something different in whatever your area of expertise is, whether that's teaching an instrument or another kind of coaching you're doing. In addition to that, I want to let you know about a really cool payment and scheduling platform that if you don't know about it, you got to get in the know. It's called FONS. It's a company co-founded by guitarist Eric Branner, who was actually a guest on Crushing Classical, which streamlines the whole business and admin side of lessons. From scheduling to payments to integrating Zoom like everyone is doing now, FONS takes care of it all. When you use FONS, scheduling becomes a breeze, students get email reminders, they always know the Zoom link, and no more chasing after payments. Everything comes through on one platform and results in a direct deposit to you. FONS usually gives you a 15-day free trial, but if you'd like to try FONS for free for an additional 30 days, use the link in the show notes, fons.com/join/@TracyG Friedlander. That link is in the show notes, and give it a try. Let's get started. Hey, Sophie, welcome to Crushing Classical.
Hi, Tracy. Great to be here.
So great to have you. So I met you on Instagram.
Yes.
Which I love. And you're a pianist. So, I've always kind of wondered and thought about this, like pianists just sort of naturally have to be more entrepreneurial because there's no just a list of jobs for piano players out there. Like you can't really, some orchestras have full-time piano positions. And of course there's professorships and stuff, but generally as a pianist, I think you have to be more entrepreneurial minded, right?
Mm-hmm. I would agree with.
Yeah. So tell me about that. Tell me how you created the career you have. You can tell me a little bit about your career too.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I do think that most of my impulse arose from a desire to be an entrepreneur. I mean, I was very young. I started playing piano. And so I have a kind of traditional arc as a child musician that started doing well and excelling and was clearly had a knack for the instrument and started winning competitions. And then it became very formative in terms of my identity. And so I went off to Rice, the Shepherd School of Music, and studied with John Kamara Parker. And that was really an incredible joy. And I graduated and needed some space from music. And yeah, I didn't know what was going to be the next step, but what I was drawn to was I had this huge curiosity about how people ran different types of businesses. And so the first thing that I jumped into was supporting an incredible entrepreneur, Anita Jaisinghani, in the building of a new restaurant that she was launching. And that became a deep passion and interest to me. And I was so curious about all of the intricacies and nuances of, every single step of the building process, because that's what the building of the business, especially when you start from the ground up, and especially when it involves a physical location, there's so many different steps that just kind of, have to all take place sequentially, and each one builds onto the next one. And so I started having these experiences in the world that were felt like a business school, but were really in the real in my life. And so doing that, and then moving to Portland and opening a business again that was not specifically music. Music was a component of it, but it was more of a gathering space, a community space that was oriented around yoga and wellness and dance and big community dinners. And I think what was so supportive for me at that stage of my process, so I was pretty young then. I was 24, 25 when I signed a 6-year lease on a space.
Wow.
But what helped me do that was distilling down my personal purpose. So even at that point, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with myself. I didn't know exactly how music would weave in, but what I knew and what I got clear about was the fact that I am here to do work as a connector in this world. So I kind of was able to think about myself and my relationship to what I wanted to bring, both in business and personal life. And when I saw that was connection, and then I started thinking about all these different ways that I could weave that thread of connection through, it became clear to me that I needed to create a space that I could cultivate community. And then it didn't really matter exactly what the tool was that I was using, right? It ended up being that music emerged out of that space as something that was has come to be my favorite way to connect people and bring people together. But it wasn't always that. And I think I needed to wander a little bit, learn a lot about business and being an entrepreneur, kind of like throw myself into the weeds, be right there, creating experiences, building from the ground up, seeing how things worked, learning, doing a lot of online classes, reading a lot of books, and then just immersing and seeing eventually, as I started finding more ways to build business and bring community together, music came out again in this big way that I can tell you the story later if you're curious about, how I landed a couple of big gigs with the Seattle Philharmonic and the Olympia Symphony. And I mean, they were all based on connections. That's the spoiler alert.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it.
Yeah. So there's just this really nice and very organic way. So part of it was learning how to create a lot of structure. And I've learned the importance of that and really gotten, I would say that's one of my strengths as a human, is that I know how to build structure and kind of follow through on that structure, and letting there also be an organic flow from that structure. So yes, I can build the foundation of a business, but I can't have too much of an agenda actually, because what needs to be revealed will only be revealed if I get my ego out of the way and listen to, and in that, in my case, it was that first I thought it was going to be yoga, and then I thought it was going to be nutrition. And then of course it was music. It had to be music. It was always music, but I needed to let it reemerge rather than me kind of forcing an agenda on it.
Okay. I have so much to say right now. I'm like, okay. First of all, this is a theme. Like, do you ever experience a theme of the week or like a theme of the day? Like you'll have a
Yeah.
conversation and then like the next day, another one that's related and you're just like, what's happening right now? But
Yes.
first of all, there's a couple things I really love about all the things you just said. The first thing is you seem incredibly evolved and self-aware, which probably didn't happen when you were 24, but but you became that way. And I wonder if you can kind of, in hindsight, explain how that happened for you. Because I know like you don't wake up when you're just getting out of college and go, I'm a connector of people.
Yeah.
And I love building community. Like you don't say that, right? Excuse me. But like you had this experience where you were working in a restaurant and or not just working in one, helping create and build one. And
Yeah.
I've worked in the restaurant industry. I know what a connector of people and community they are, no matter if it's just a corner bar or if
Yeah.
it's like a culinary experience. It's people gathering and there's there's a lot of power in that, like a lot.
Yeah.
And so is that where it came from? And like, how did that evolve? Because that is so cool.
I love that question. It makes me want to take a step back and like take a breath into it. The first thought that comes out for me is I have always been really curious about people and about kind of personal journeys. And a big part for me, since being little, I have had a dedicated writing practice. And it's ebbed and flows, but it's most days I write. I do some sort of journaling or writing. And it is
awesome.
Definitely in that, in the style of no censoring, let whatever impulse is coming out, come out. And I think that through writing is not the tool for everyone, right? But it's the tool of self-inquiry that has been the most hands down powerful. I've done a lot of therapy, both individual and group therapy. I've had a lot of close friendships where we've engaged on deep levels. But for me, finding the threads of clarity, I believe has come a lot. I would credit writing with that.
That's great advice.
And again, it's tricky because not everyone, I have a mind that loves words and has it, I partially because I think I started engaging in that way so early. I have a lot of practice exploring, emoting, expressing, processing through in that outlet. It's not the outlet for everyone, but it is, for me, it's been tremendously supportive. And I would say that with a fair amount of more kind of a conscious framework. So doing classes and workshops that really ask you to, for example, as an entrepreneur, what are you here to do? There was a lot of that I did pretty early. And I do think that came from, this desire, this curiosity about business and being clear that even if I was going to be a musician, whatever I was going to do, there needed to be that solid, more business-oriented framework. And so when I came to Portland, and rather than initially launching into a more music-specific world, I started launching much more. I did a lot of networking with entrepreneurs of all different stripes, solopreneurs and solo business owners, and a lot of networks of women business owners. And so I started collecting data pretty early about how different people were operating within this entrepreneurial template, because it's not a one size fits all. And then, doing a fair amount of questioning and types of workshops with these creators of many different genres, many different types that were, we had these big questions being asked of us. What are you here to do? And it's less about how exactly are you going to do it, because that kind of the implication was you'll figure that out, but get clear first about what you're here to do, and then everything else can follow much more organically from that. So does that answer
that. Oh no, yeah, it does. And you know what I love about what you just said is that you're not totally focused on the what, but you're focused on the why.
Yes.
And that's uncomfortable for everybody, right? Because you want to know, like, how am I going to do that? How am I going to create that thing? How am I going to fund it? How am I going to get people in the door? How am I going to get people to pay me? How am I going to, all of those questions about how.
Yes.
Those are the scary parts.
Yes.
Would you say that when you focus on the why, the what happens easier? Or maybe it falls into place, like, or if you trust the process, that like focusing on the why and creating with confidence that the unknown will become known as it's supposed to, instead of like wishing you knew what's going to happen before it happens, right? Because that's the hard part about entrepreneurship.
Yes. Yes. I do think it was for me really important to get that information, kind of create this foundation of, okay, this is really, I'm so clear about why I'm doing what I'm doing, because then it's maybe less about trusting the whole process, but trusting myself that I'm actually doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And I am hesitant to say it makes everything easier. I don't think it necessarily makes things easier.
No, nothing is easier, but maybe the question should be, does it help you mentally? Or
I absolutely think so. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Because nothing about entrepreneurship is easy.
Right. And the thing about that, it doesn't make the execution of all the, to me, excruciatingly boring and the logistical nightmares, all those things. It will never be able to bypass that. There is a little bit of language that sometimes comes, in particular in some pockets of my entrepreneurial circuits here in Portland, Oregon, where everyone's can be a little bit woo-woo, and it's so easy to start talking about manifesting and, well, if you want something enough, you'll get it, but there's this, it is so much hard work too. Yeah. So it's not just about, I knew my why and then everything fell into place. I had to work my tush off. And I had to, once I got clear, kind of in that more abstract, creative sense of why, then I had to follow it with, okay, but now I need to be extraordinarily clear about exactly what the what is. And that's where the structure comes in, because that's where, okay. And then being able to tell exactly what needs to happen, and everything's going to build on top, on everything else. But there's so much that had to be done sequentially and just right, and the details. And so I think for me, trusting that I was in the place that I was supposed to be, it absolutely helped with that. Because then even when things were going to hell with the business, which, of course there's going to be moments that it feels terrible. And I always knew that I was working towards towards a goal and a why that was right for me.
That is so powerful. And, I think one of the things I want to point out right now, because as you're talking, I'm thinking about how you as a classically trained pianist immediately worked to develop and create a brand new restaurant. And then out of that, you went to create an in-person physical space. And you weren't I think that one of the things that, remember when I said there's a theme, I posted this week about the idea of a purpose, and that your purpose, I know that in my past I made the mistake or just never even had the consciousness around that your purpose can evolve and change and grow. And so, like you had the purpose of playing the piano, but you didn't make the other business side of you and the creative side of you in other avenues, like getting that physical space and the yoga and the wellness aspect. That wasn't taking away from your purpose as a pianist, but it was just enhancing it and contributing to it in a new way. And so I
Yeah.
think that's another piece of the puzzle that I personally hadn't figured out until like way much later, and forget about all the suffering that happened up to that like kind of realization. But I think people think that your purpose is like the one thing that you have a purpose on, that's your purpose forever. It's the reason you're on the planet. And I think purpose is more of like, what's your purpose in this moment? What's your purpose in your business? What's your purpose? Like more of that why as opposed to the what, because you can always bring piano into it, which you have.
Yes.
Which is so cool. So I want to hear how did you bring piano back in after you have like, oh, I have so many questions about like the business side of having a space and stuff, but I want to talk about you as a musician and bringing the piano piece and the musician side of you into your business.
Sure. Yeah. So there was a few big things that happened. Just the first one was bringing a beautiful Yamaha C7 into my space, into the yoga and wellness space. And suddenly having a physical instrument in there seemed to open up so many more opportunities for me to really, channel that purpose and that why through music. And so as we started to bring more and more music-oriented events into that space, and I started having more and more collaborations with different musicians in Portland, that was another pretty organic thing. So suddenly I had a beautiful piano. I started playing some kind of casual shows or incorporating music into different events. And then musicians came to me, or I approached other musicians and had, hey, let's do a collaboration. And suddenly, I think because I had given myself to breathe into, again, that why, and then all of a sudden feeling again, this like, I have an incredible love for the piano. I just lost track of that a little bit when I was working so darn hard and excelling so much, because it had been wrapped up so much in a story of self-worth and proving and showing and being a perfectionist and all those things that, are these traps in the classical music world. And so I had to distance a little bit and come back and realize, oh my gosh, beyond all that, this instrument, piano, music, this way of playing is one of my deepest joys ever. And in having this visceral understanding of that, not having it was a little more disattached from all the stories of who I was supposed to be, what I should do because I was so good at it, all of those other things, then coming back to it and being able to infuse it with the purpose and see how it could be a part of this incredible piece of what I felt like the work in the world that I wanted to do and that that was right for me to do. Then I started kind of blowing open with the idea of possibilities of what that could be. And I mean, I had to be pretty proactive on a number of occasions. My first reappearance with the Seattle Philharmonic. So I had played with them back when I was 18. I had won a concerto competition and played with them. I had kept in casual communication with the music director there, Adam Stern. And I just decided on one, it just felt right. I was beginning to play more shows and I just reached out to him. I sent an email to him and said, hey, Adam, here's where I'm at. I'm beginning to make more music. If you would ever be interested in a collaboration again, it was so great to work with you. It was short, it was easy, but within a day I had gotten a call back from him and he said, oh my gosh, you won't believe this, but I've been thinking of you because I have this piece by a composer, a French composer that I am enamored with her music. She's very underrepresented here in the States. And I want to do the North American premiere of one of her pieces. And it has this big featured piano roll in it. Would you like to do? I was thinking about trying to figure out who the right person would be. So that, and then, whatever you call it, whoever orchestrated that, however that the pieces fell into place with that, it certainly took that, it took an impulse and a gut feeling for me to reach out, and then some bravery. Like, I want to acknowledge everyone who puts themselves out there, because that's hard. Yes. Every time I do it, it feels, it continues to be, I have had to do that hundreds and hundreds of times now as a business builder, a space builder, and an entrepreneur. But every single time it still feels a little uncomfortable. But being willing to do that, and then having there be a couple of things that snowballed out of that, the Olympia Symphony show kind of snowballed out of that. And then once I was having these bigger appearances again on bigger stages, having more exposure, I was able to then reorient and check back in with myself and say, okay, now that you're back in a space where you're seeing how important piano music is, and how I wanted to move it more into kind of like a front burner place in my life, I realized that I needed to birth a concert series. Basically, that got clear. And that was the combination of things. But that was a lot more for me. Writing really helped me figure that out again. Writing,
journaling, right? Just journaling.
That's exactly what I mean. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. So it was like, out of the experience of sort of getting back into the scene in a more traditional sense, as a concerto soloist for orchestras.
Yes.
You realized, wait, I not only do I want to do this more, but I want to be the creator of the series.
Yes, because I didn't want to just do conventional classical. Like, I did that. I got back on the big stage. Uh-huh. It's exciting. It's exhilarating. It is an adrenaline rush like nothing else, right? You can't replicate that feeling. And there was something that just, when I'm thinking in service of connection, there is I wanted to create an experience that, to me, I knew there was a way that I could create something that felt more connective. And I didn't see that happening quite in the way that I wanted to have it be created. And anywhere around me, it wasn't quite. So I was just like, what the heck? Let's I think I need to birth it.
That's amazing. And I love that you use the term birth it, because creating a concert series like that really is like a birth, right? I mean, you're creating something entirely new that you've completely dreamed up.
Yes.
But I just love that. So it's almost like, I love the evolution of this, because you realized, as a connector and as a builder of community, and you'd already done that in your yoga space, that you wanted to sort of merge these two things into life. And so that's what you did. So tell me about what you created. Tell us about the concert series.
Sure. Well, the first big piece that wants to come out right now is just the fact that it really, I think, number one, I thought about the concert series as a business from the very beginning. So it never was just, let me play a show and let me, it was really, so it was very intentionally as like a business in that way. And I think of every concert, not just as a show, but as a curated experience. I almost think of designing a concert like I would think of designing a workshop or a different event, where you're so clear about, okay, this is the type of experience that I want people to have, So again, it's like, for me, when I think about a show, it's the why, right? Why are people coming here? What do I want them to walk away with? What is the point of this? beyond just sharing some music. It is never for me just about sharing music. And so if the point is cultivating community, if the point is, having this very intimate, connective experience, then everything that I do, all of the musicians on the stage, all of the ways that we program the music has to be in service of that. So it's way less about just playing music really well and way more about creating an experience that people are going to walk away with and be somehow be resourced or connected, walk away with something really powerful and profound that, so that's kind of, conceptual. On the logistical level, this concert series is a multi-genre concert series. What that means is that our first season was made up of 8 shows. Each show featured 3 to 6 different performers from different genres. So we always have at least one classical performer on the bill, and generally that is me. But then the rest of the people on the bill have been run the gamut from many, many different types of musicians. So a really rad spoken word artist, a woman who does kind of experimental weaves in like African beats with kind of ethereal electronic beats and vocals. I've had traditional jazz players. I've had singer-songwriters from Portland. I've had an incredible woman from Spain who does, she plays hammer dulcimer. She's up in Seattle, Marina Albero. So just this really, really beautiful combination of people and coming together, and the way that the shows are sequenced again. So I have artists present, we had a theme for every show. So the show was titled something other than just Connections Concerts presents these performers. One of the shows was called Power, another was called Passion, another was called, so they have these titles that begin to provoke, and intrigue and say, okay, wait, so there's going to be some other connective through line, something thematically that we will explore. And therefore my program notes, rather than, my kind of director's notes in the program, rather than being just kind of vague, I'm bringing people again, kind of like with this intention. What are we gonna think about today? Not just what types of music are we gonna hear, but what might we be thinking about and pondering and exploring as we listen to this music? And then each performer, rather than presenting a set of a guitarist and then a set of a singer and a set of me, we have interweave all of the music throughout. So what's so cool about that, for audience members have told me time and time again, how suddenly you begin to hear through lines, thematic through lines, harmonic through lines, melodic through lines, all of these through lines in very different types of music, channeled by very different types of performers. But you hear this consistency, and suddenly people listen to jazz in a different way than they would. They listen to classical music certainly in a different way than they would, because they'll hear the way that the way that the harmonies in Beethoven's sonata, suddenly, like out of that emerges this great jazz player that you hear similar harmonies, in that piece. So there's a lot more. You can tell, probably hear in my voice, this is a project that I love and I could wax poetic about for hours. But
yes, well, what I love about it is, well, I love lots of genres. Most people do.
Yes.
And the other thing that's consistent with majority of classical musicians I know is that they want more people to fall in love with the genre.
Yes.
They just want that. And so, but I think the approach oftentimes is like, you should like this genre because it's good and I love it and I've grown up with it and I've studied it and it's so good and you have to learn it. And generally people don't always respond to, hey, you should do this, right?
Yeah.
Usually it's a self-discovery thing. And so what
Yeah.
you're creating is the space for people to discover it themselves because they came to a concert because they really like the spoken word artist, or they really love singer-songwriter, or they really love,
Yes.
you know, some other aspect or some theme that you present. So maybe, like you said, sometimes it's thematic and that speaks to them. So that's like an opportunity for someone to feel like they discovered it themselves, which is always so much more powerful.
Yes.
You know, I love
Yeah.
that. So tell me about, you know, how the community aspect of what you had been building, how that, you know, because you had said like you're a bringer of people, to like a connector of people, right? And
Yes.
then you did that in your business, and then you used the connections and relationships you've made in the past to kind of revive your piano career again. And then now you've created this new thing, but you've laid the groundwork for that in such a beautiful way. So I'd love for you to speak to that piece of the puzzle. Because I think that, I mean, I teach audience building, and that's what audience building is creating community and connection, really.
Right.
If you boil it down, it's not like, that's how I like to think of it, so much more than like, you have to post on Instagram 10 times a day. It's more about like having the true fans and true followers. And that's what you've done in the real world space. So let's dive into that juicy one for me.
Sweet. Well, I definitely think, I mean, it was very advantageous for me to have been thinking about and, you know, actively pursuing building community and connection before launching the concert series, because I started out with an email list of 1,000 people, right?
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
So I have this, I already have this, I have a community that's been building, that's been privy to, and again, I mean, I have to say, even from starting my space, which was called Vibrant Studios, even at that point, at the very beginning, I had this impulse to start, you know, see how I could grow the community, kind of expedite that growth process. So I brought in as many, rather than just saying, okay, I'm going to hire a couple of different, you know, a few teachers and they'll teach all these classes. No, I think at the beginning we had 15 different people teaching classes out of the space every week, which is a little crazy in hindsight, logistically a nightmare. But what that meant is right from the beginning, we had 15 very different types of people who were contributing their distinct, unique audiences to, you know, so suddenly the people coming in the door were so much, you know, so far beyond what I personally could have built from my personal network. And I had a similar impulse when building this concert series. So that was part of, you know, I diversified so much in terms of every single concert had a different lineup. I am the only musician who was repetitive, who was a, you know, reoccurrence. I had different performers every single time, which again is extraordinarily intense as a business owner, because there's just so much coordination that's involved. But it is so advantageous in terms of being able to draw from, you know, just widening the girth and the scope of the audience base to begin with. And so not only did I have a community that I could come in with that I had already developed relationships with. So I had this core group of followers and, you know, of friends and family and, you know, community members that had built over the past 6-7 years, that were used to see, you know, that knew me, that knew the way that I, you know, engaged with community. Again, I had a different way now. I was painting with different colors. I was painting with music rather than, you know, big community dinners like I had been doing for the 6 years before. But it was still me. I had the same voice. I had the same purpose, right? And so being able to bring that in, then immediately start collaborating with a broad range of diverse musicians from different genres, different circles, meant that we could build the audience pretty significantly right from the beginning. And I also brought in a number of different, each show I had a different set of other small businesses that I collaborated with for, say, selling chocolates or contributing other little swag, like goodies for the swag bags. I had a VIP tickets, and people who bought the VIP tickets got a number of other little goodies. And so suddenly it was not only collaborations with musicians, but also collaborations with different entrepreneurs in the community. So I'm having all of these different pools of, eclectic, unique pools. Not only is it different pools, but it was pools that sometimes had very little crossover to begin with.
Right.
And that suddenly, when I'm filling a hall, and I wasn't trying to fill huge halls, I had sold out halls that were like 120 people or something. But still, when you have 120 people that wouldn't generally be in a room together, participating in an experience, there's something very cool that happens. And that was part of my impulse always too, is that I didn't just want to create, put a whole bunch of people in a room that would be in a room together for a different reason. There's something I believe, and that's, again, when you zoom back out, what's the purpose? There's something about the way that we can bring together humanity and, work towards more connection and more unification and embracing differences, but also just bringing people together. I just think there's so much power to having a unique group of people in a room together. And so that being able to pull that off. And I will say, there's a lot of room for growth still for me in that realm. There was still the audience was significant percentage drawing from my personal network, and that network that I had built pre-existing through my previous business. So I would like there to be more, but I love the seed of the potential that's in there. And I can't wait until we can do live shows again, because there's so much room for it to unfurl and blossom even more.
Absolutely. And you still keep, what I love is that 30,000 foot view of your purpose is so important to see here, because it's the same purpose, like the same themed purpose throughout, but different things. So I love that so much. So yeah, now we're talking about the fact that we can't really have in-person experiences.
Right.
So, but you were able to have an online concert, and it was really successful. So let's hear about this.
Sure. Okay. Well, I'll share a little bit of the nitty gritty. So, I released my first solo piano CD, and in conjunction with that, I decided I wanted to do a live stream performance. I still was committed to the live thing, because I do think that there's something special that can be done live, even when it's not in person. However, I didn't want to just do, I've seen, again, it's like with the concert series, like I was seeing people do things and they just didn't really, they didn't feel like, it's like I was trying to put on a shirt that didn't really fit me right? So the way that I've been seeing people do live streams, I was like, I think there needs to be something different. So I decided to ticket it just like I would one of my Connections concerts. And what that means not only is to, offer the tickets through Eventbrite, so do a totally formal ticket process, but do like I did with the concert series, offer people different ticket tiers. that they could commit to. So I had a general admission that was like, I think in this case it was $8. I had a $16 that was included a CD from me. I had a $32 that included a donation to a great music foundation that's supporting music education for kids. And then I had a $64 VIP that you could choose a song that I was going to that I would play at the show. So I love doing Ticketeers. First of all, because it gives people the opportunity to have the resources to commit at a higher level. And I have been blown away both doing in-person shows and for this show, for the live stream even, people who are able to give and want to, like, it's an incredible opportunity to let people be generous. And that's one of the things that's so, it's especially in Portland. I feel so, there's so many people who do shows and just do like a $5 cover. I'm like, oh, sweetie, like this is so unsustainable. And I understand we want to let people come to the shows, but just having that thing, and I'm seeing incredible caliber of musicianship, across genres, players that are just extraordinary, and charging me $5 almost feels like laughable, right? So I don't want to make it prohibitive. Like I do still want to give anyone the opportunity to come. So I'm going to give you the opportunity. If you want to pay $9, $9 total with a couple of the $1 of Eventbrite fees, great. You can come, that is doable for most everyone. But for people that are able to engage, invest in a different way, so I love that. I'm so glad that I incorporated that into my shows, because it made the series much more sustainable, because a very small percentage of ticket holders support the longevity of the series. Basically, I make more money off of 5 people who's, commit at $80 a pop than I do, I'm not going to do the math right now, but then the majority of anyone else who pays the general admission price. So anyway, doing the Ticketeers and just doing a little bit of advertising and reaching out to people. I'm rewinding now to this concert that I just did. I did Ticketeers. I gave people the opportunity to buy in advance. And I reached out, sent a more personal emails out through my newsletter list and through my personal contacts, and just a little bit on social media. But I was able to sell, I sold 140 tickets just for me doing a show. I collaborated. I hosted at a venue that I'd worked with before, so they donated the space for me, and so that was really. So I had this free space to work in. I had a videographer who is a friend of mine who did the video work. I did all the other back of house logistical things myself. So again, I had no other fees that I had to pay out for the show. And was able to sell 145 tickets. So for someone who had not made any money playing any live shows for 6 months, then to have something that felt so good and was so there was such it felt easy in comparison to a lot of what I do. A lot of those live shows, and to have it be pretty lucrative for me too, that felt so good. So
that's so great. So can you share how much you made?
I made like $2,200.
That's fantastic. That is so fantastic. And it makes it sustainable to not only do that, but also to hire a videographer and someone to make it a higher quality sound and everything else.
Yes.
And this just speaks to the power of the community that you'd already built.
Yes.
The audience who already wants to support you. And I just have to speak to the ticket tier piece, because That's brilliant. I wish I would have heard you say that,
Uh,
a year ago when I started my own ensemble,
yep.
and it's, I think we could probably do another whole episode about the business concepts of what you're talking about, and how you
Yes.
said thinking of a concert series as a business, because that is something that's just kind of completely foreign to most musicians. How do
Yeah.
you make a business out of ticket sales? Because everyone hears constantly, especially if you're in a symphony, if you work in an orchestra, that the ticket sales are only a fraction of the revenue that an orchestra makes, because
Yes.
they're supported and there's grants and there's donations and all this stuff. And you repeatedly hear, oh, the ticket sales don't make that much of an impact. So then it sort of boggles the mind, if you do decide to have your own concert series, what next,
Yeah.
So actually, if you would want to do that, I think we should do a part 2 at some point.
Totally. Yeah.
Okay, that would be so great to break it apart and get down to the nitty gritty of like what that means to make it a business. And
Yeah.
I love the idea of the ticket tiers. I love the idea of not only, you're not just saying the $60 ticket, you get the same thing as the $5 ticket. You're saying you're going to get some extra value. You get to
Yes.
choose a song. You get to get a swag bag. You get,
Yeah.
there's an orchestra in Miami, Florida. The founders I've interviewed a couple of times. It's called New Deco Ensemble. And they have a situation where there's sort of a hybrid nonprofit for-profit. I don't know exactly how they operate necessarily, but one of the brilliant things that I love about theirs is that they've created it sort of as a membership. So you pay X amount for a couple and this much for one person ticket, and you get to go to all the shows, and there's pre-concert experiences and there's post-concert cocktail parties with the musicians.
Yes.
And you get all of these extras. So it's like increasing the value that doesn't necessarily cost you much more money.
Yes.
But it's the experience that you're creating.
Yes.
So I love that. And you always talk about creating an experience. I'd love for you to speak a little bit to how you had said on our previous conversation, you had said like you're creating the space for this concert to happen, and you're setting up like a co-creation situation. I don't know how that works if it's a live stream where the audience really isn't there, but I'm sure you did. Knowing a little bit of what I know about you, I'm sure that you did something to kind of facilitate or just create that kind of experience for people. So I'd love for you to speak to that too.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I have a little bit of a spiel that I give at the beginning of Connections concerts. And one of the things that I say is that to the audience, I address the audience right before. And side note, I keep it short because I find it to be incredibly irritating when people come for a concert and then you get talked at for like 15 minutes before the music starts. So that's another thing about curating the container. It's like, people, they tell you people, and this is, I've attended lots of workshops about facilitating workshops. And this is one of those things they say, people remember the end and the beginning and maybe a peak in the middle, but that's going to be the most memorable moment. So be really incredibly, especially intentional about what you do at those moments, because that's just, our brains are conditioned to do that. That's the way we work. So anyway, one of the things I say at this very brief introduction is, you are here as a co-creator. So I say to the audience, what happens in a room here tonight is contingent upon you and us being here together and creating a container together. As musicians, we sit at home and we practice and prepare in the way that we do. But what happens in this moment is an organic expression of the combination of our energy and our preparation and our skill and expertise, and you being here too. And so I said something similar at the live stream show that I did. I said, despite the fact that, we are all right now, I am playing for you and with this, the knowledge and the feeling, the sensation that this is a shared experience. I have to say that before the show, the whole day before the show, I felt in my body exactly like I would before a big live show, a big in-person show. You know, I was having all the same signaling, all the same kind of, I felt adrenaline very early in the day, you know, like I was having, you know, I had to do all of my normal pre-concert rituals. So despite the fact that I had no one in the room with me, I was very aware. My system was very aware of the fact that I was going to be playing in front of 150 people that night. And despite them not being in the same room, there was going to be an energy and a vitality to it, and that is only possible when there's a shared experience. So I spoke to that, and I say it because I believe it. You know, it's a little bit, again, it's a little bit abstract to talk on an energetic level, but I work with the data that I have, and the data I have is like the signaling that my body gives me and the way that I see the magic that happens in a room when people are physically together, and the way that when I'm playing, I feel like the music will flow through me differently when there are people there sharing the experience. It's like I embody the music in a different way. It inhabits me, I inhabit it all. And that's a whole different, you know, topic of conversation, the way that I talk and think about the way that I think that I feel as a musician when we do get ourselves out of the way enough and can be a conduit and really listen to what wants to be expressed. You know, there's so much power there in channeling the music and creativity and inspiration that is so much beyond the notes. But in any case, I do think that I love bringing that component when I speak to audience members as co-creators. And even the feedback I got for the live show that I did, the live stream show, people said, I have never felt such an intimate experience via live stream. You know, I've felt there was so much intimacy, so much connection. And I think speaking, you know, with language, with verbiage like that, and really inviting people in and saying, you're a part of this. You know, this is not happening to you. This is happening with you, you know, not like we're here together. Then it asks people to kind of step up and be present in a different way too. And that's what I love also about the invitation, because there is a completely different power that in the experience that someone will have when they are actually present. I know this very well because I attend all sorts of online events where I am half there and half not, and maybe I have it on in the background, and I get almost nothing from those experiences. I might get one or two little takeaways, but if I set my phone or my computer down and sit there with it and create a container for that space, and someone says, you're here, I want you to show up, then there's a different way that the whole experience will feel and will affect me and will be carried with me.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I love that so much, Sophie. So you mentioned your album coming out.
Yep.
Tell us about it and how people can check it out.
Sure thing. The album is called Time Travel. It is a collection of 15 different songs by 9 different composers, composed over the course of 300 years. So it's pretty ambitious and pretty eclectic. But like with my shows, I will say, I really thought of the curation of this album as being an experience that I wanted to really, it comes back to that thing about, creating a container for connection, basically. And so despite the fact that a recorded CD can feel really sterile, I didn't want to just kind of be complacent and roll over and say, okay, so this is going to be kind of a sterile replication of me playing live. So one of the things that I decided to do, which was really gutsy and provocative for me, partially because I got some pushback early on from a couple of important mentors in my life who I talked to about it, but it just kept feeling right. And so I decided to do it. Is the inclusion of 5 spoken tracks on the album. So I've sequenced the album with 15 musical tracks, and each are in sets of 3 pieces. So in between each set of 3 pieces, there is a spoken introduction of what is to come. And a little bit of it's personal, and it's a combination of personal and engaging, and then talking a little bit about the music. So kind of like what you'd hear at a show if you heard a musician talking before they were to play a piece. And I am so happy that I decided to do this. It still feels edgy to me. It's still, I'm still feeling into how that, how it creates, how it informs and creates the package. But I will say, I have gotten nothing but positive responses from listeners who, again, they speak again to how intimate they feel of an experience, how they're able to hear the music in a different way than they would, how they feel so personally, welcomed in and drawn into the listening experience. And it really does. It feels as in an age where people are oftentimes just listening to one track at a time and not kind of committing to an album in a different way. I think for anyone who commits to listening to this album, it's a really exciting journey that they can go on. So I feel it's a little vulnerable for me because it's not something I've seen done before. And so I'm aware of it for most things that have not been done before. You don't know if it's going to work.
Right.
But it's a risk that I was willing to take, especially for this album. It felt right. So the album is called Time Travel. It's available on all major streaming platforms to listen to, and it's available to purchase on my website.
Awesome. Okay, well, I'll make sure those links are in the show notes, but and yeah, you said it's streaming too, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yes. Awesome. So we'll have those links and of course your social media links and everything so people can connect with you in all the various ways. And I so much enjoyed this conversation, Sophie, and I really do think that we should do part 2. And really unravel that business side of things, because I think that's something you've really honed in on and figured out. And I think that's a whole other hour conversation probably. So yeah.
I love it. Yeah. Thanks so much,
awesome.
Tracy. This was great.
Awesome. You're so welcome and so happy to have you.